Hello everyone. I just played a really cool game in the Bogo Indian defense, and it was pretty much perfect. I only made one mistake, but the position was still winning after I made the mistake, so I'd like to call it a perfect game. So let's get into this instructive Bogo Indian line. I started with d4, knight f6, mainline stuff, c4, e6, and bishop b4, signaling the Bogo Indian defense. And in the Bogo Indian, basically, it's not really the main line. Oftentimes, higher level players prefer the Nimzo Indian, but here I'll show you what I did to not refute it, but to get a good position. Play bishop d2, and this is a really principled move. Since my knight hasn't developed yet to c3, I'm getting rid of his good bishop in exchange for my bad bishop, and this is a very principled way to play. Also, if we do end up trading the material off, I'll be able to develop my queen or my knight with tempo. So I feel like theoretically this is very good for white, and when I am in the mood to win, I'll play this variation. So he takes, I take with queen, and anytime the knight comes to attack the queen, there's a number of good options. The queen is well placed on e3, d3, c2, a lot of good moves. And by the way, on c2 and d3, the knight moves with tempo, so that's never really too dangerous in the Bogo Indian. So I develop my knight to c3, and he castles. I play e3. It's a nice move to be able to play, considering I don't have a dark square bishop that I have to worry about. So I can close up the position on the dark squares, and my bishop and my pieces can still move freely. And that queen has nothing to do out here anyway, so that's not a problem. My opponent plays c5. Now the first deviation from all known lines, and this is kind of a tough spot. It really made me think. I had a good think here, and during my think, my opponent actually offered a draw. Of course, I declined. I told him in the chat that this was a pretty interesting game and I'd like to see how it plays out. I don't play the Bogo Indian too often. Usually people don't do it. So I decided D takes C is the best move. And I think the computer really likes this move too. It's resolving the tension in the center in a way that will work well for me. Um, the idea is that it won't be so convenient for him to pick this pawn up quickly. All his pieces are like 2 tempi away from attacking it. It's preventing his b pawn from moving, so it's serving a temporary purpose. I figured it's good to take. At some point, I might want to play b4 to bolster it. But my opponent plays knight to a6. And this, I think, was my opponent's mistake. Because now when I do what I did in the game, c takes d, my bishop's going to take this knight and ruin his pawn structure if he doesn't move it. And my opponent played knight on f takes d5, and this was a mistake. I played knight takes knight, my opponent took with the queen, and when everything got traded off, he's left with this weak, isolated pawn. So, he allowed me to take the knight, ruining the pawn structure. This looks like it's already winning. He's going to pile up on my passed pawn, and I'm going to defend it, and then I'll be free to move and do whatever I want. And I feel like his weak d pawn should be easy for me to attack. So I castle 2. Both of us are near complete development. He's still got to worry about what to do with that bad light square bishop. And he attacks my b pawn, and I played the only mistake of the game. Now, this is, in my opinion, a slight inaccuracy, but apparently allowing bishop here with tempo on f5 is bad. But, I had a plan to go to the d file with my rook, and then when I capture the pawn, I'll be attacking the bishop. So I figured this is good, and it's still winning for white, I'd say. He takes my b pawn, I take the d pawn. Now, this is why me attacking his bishop is good, because if I wasn't attacking his bishop, he would take my pawn. So he does play the move that attacks the rook, but I had a plan, and I just simply play the rook to d2. I slammed it on the board without even thinking because I already expected him to play that. he thought for a while and then played rook to b5. Now, anytime this bishop takes this knight, I'm just going to capture with the g-pawn, and I figured bolstering the center would be good. It could support pieces, which could support this pawn. Also, it would allow my king to get out. And my opponent, I think correctly, didn't take the knight, but also taking the knight would have ruined my pawn structure a little bit. But that being said, on the king's side, I have a pawn majority, so the pawn structure doesn't need to be perfect. It's pretty secure. I played to the c file with my rook, just holding on to that pawn, and he attacks it. Now here I was thinking about the best way to proceed. I was considering knight to g5, but I ended up with playing rook to d4, also a good move. Now his bishop has to move. Note that where my rook was, I wouldn't be able to go to the c file to defend the pawn, so going here is logical. And he just defends the bishop. I did not expect this. I thought he'd be moving it somewhere, maybe to blockade this pawn. But I then move my knight, attacking the bishop, and putting an attacker on f7. And this will be relevant in a minute. Now, my opponent thinks he's sneaky. He plays rook takes on the c file. The issue being that he thinks if I take, he takes, and then I do anything like taking the bishop, then he has back rank checkmate. But he kind of forgot that since he moved his f-pawn, he thought he was safe, but he forgot that my knight is holding on to that f7 square. So I simply just take his rook, and he relatively quickly goes and takes the rook, hanging mate in 1. My opponent had a lot of time on the clock. He seemed a little frustrated with the opening. I knew the opening moves pretty quick, so I didn't take much time on the clock. And then when he played the first non-book move, I literally sat there and thought for like 20% of the clock because it was a pivotal moment, and you got to use time during these moments. A lot of moves you can rattle them off quickly in blitz or in rapids. This was a rapid game, but there's certain positions where you have to really think because they will define how the rest of the game goes. And my opponent was frustrated that I sat there and stared at a move in the opening for that long, but it wasn't in my opening knowledge. And according to Fritz, I looked it up after the game, and it said that nobody played that c5 move, sort of a Albin counter gambit style, but with the Bogo Indian queen on d2. So at no point during this game did I have a disadvantage, as you can see from the graph. Thank you very much for watching.